Uh, okay, here we are. So I guess, I guess something kind of weird is that I might as well have an introduction on all of that on one hand, or on the other, I might as well not even try to have something like that because it becomes kind of meaningless when in a day like this one it is going to be so short. So yeah, I I prefer, let's say, to keep it short in terms of yeah, not that much time lost in anything else. It is always about time, so in particular occasions like this one, spending even more of that very precious time in something else is quite meaningless. I feel like so yeah. It will simply be that we are here doing continuing with ideas, with thoughts, I guess. I don't know. As always, I simply come here and talk, so there is hardly any proper way to picture all of that. So yeah, but anyways, here we are, and that is more than enough. I feel like, at least in the sense of, as I said before, it will try to go back to regularity. So yeah, we will see how it happens. It might not be every single day that I can do it a very widely long stream, but at the very least, in occasions like this one, it is that we have different ways to see it and to perceive it in order to, yeah, to picture this as something meaningful and something that seems purposeful. So yeah, it doesn't feel that bad, I would say. But anyways, um, I have simply one idea that I wanted to talk about, something that I always had been struggling with, I guess. Yeah, at a certain extent, something that I had been struggling. One of those ways in which you see things that you have so much in mind and that you try so many times to make sense out of. And it was quite wonderful to be there to think and to try and see if there was any way in which you might make it, let's not simply work, let's say, but rather in which you can make it feel purposeful. And it was this problem, as I have just mentioned before, of time and spending so much time in things and such. And I, yeah, I guess it. If I were to properly talk about it, it will be something along the lines of sadly, because it happens that if you want to ever try to dedicate yourself to anything, you need to spend quite a lot of time. Also, welcome, Savannah. And yeah, it does take quite a lot of resolve in order for you to find it in a way in which you can make it sustainable, let's say. You need quite a lot of patience and you need quite a huge degree of capacity to abstain from everything else, let's say. And in that very same way, I also see something quite funny, and that is when there are too many individualities inside of what is it that your own process is, in terms of we we have a lot of personal things that we try to deal with, and we have a lot of things that we are trying always to solve and always trying to properly put into place in terms of any creation that we have, no? And instead of that, you discover, let's say, that funnily enough, if you are given the chance, sometimes it doesn't even need to be that widespread. It is more along the lines of quality against quantity. Certainly, it it simply goes inside of that concept. But before I can explain that, I I don't really get what you're saying, Savannah. Like, do you mean to also to try another onto it, or that you personally have changed your sleeping schedule into something more healthier, I would be happy if it is the second. And certainly, if it is the first one, the first kind, I have to agree. It does help quite a lot to be capable of changing your own in this case it simply might seem to be your sleeping schedule, but to order life in general is quite good. Sometimes you start with something very little, quote unquote, and from there everything else falls onto place. So yeah, it it is quite useful to to do as many things right as you can and in the correct way as you can. But if it is, once again, as I said, the second type of perhaps personally you have changed your sleeping schedule into something healthier, then that's very nice. It still falls inside of the category of taking care of oneself is quite wonderful, and it allows so many possibilities that you sometimes might not even realize. How is it that they will allow you to have a better life, let's say? But yeah, continuing with that, the other thing, then it's I say all of that, and I talk about quality against quantity because something quite perplexing that I find myself thinking about was this idea of personality might as well not be any kind of meaning instead of what we are doing here, and there might not be any true objective behind everything that happens here, and all of that seems quite seducing to think about because, after all, who wouldn't want to give up, let's say, in something that takes so much effort? But at the same time, on the other hand, the sadder reality, I guess, is indeed it is quite different. I always try to not mention other people and other things besides our own reality because it ends up being quite meaningless to attack somebody else when you try to make a point. So to keep it short, you might as well picture it in a better way inside of your mind. There are people who come and do a lot of stuff around these places in which they never feel satisfied because they are doing certainly things that feel incredibly bad. And all of that doesn't need to be that way. You can certainly enjoy existing, let's say, and you can certainly have a good time doing only things that feel good, like it happens here. Also, yeah, I am, I am finally trying to stream more consistently. I guess. Welcome, son. I hope you are well, and I wish you also to be well. So have a seat, brother. But yeah. Here, here we are. Basically, I guess the quickest rundown of what I have been talking about, it is this idea of how I have personally been picturing this concept of seeing how it can be made somehow worthy of the experience of using your own time in order to motivate the rest of your existence, let's say, and the rest of what you try to do. In the problem is there are some very big words like your own existence and such when they don't need it to be like that. They shouldn't be treated like that. It is simply describing, yeah, perhaps if you can, I don't know, not be so harsh with yourself, the rest of your life can be good. But saying stuff like that somehow sometimes sounds incredibly wide or or unspecific when it certainly isn't. But anyways, going back into the point, I was talking about this side of sadly, let's say, for the brainworms that always exist inside of everybody's mind, that aspect of perhaps you might be doing something that isn't worthy some of your time can be negated and can be justified more than enough times with something that does indeed feel good and something that does indeed feel the best to do, even if there are always a lot of possibilities, because that is something that people should learn to accept. There are a huge degree of things in life that you can try to do that might as well feel not simply well to some minimal degree, but rather be incredibly nice to be capable of acting upon. After all, who wouldn't wish, let's say, to be capable of helping one of the many problems that everybody deals with? And there are so many, and even more if you try to pay attention. There are such a huge degree of problems that you certainly can say there are a lot of things that you might believe are incredibly worthy some of trying to solve. But the point isn't about understanding all of them. It simply is about once you can find, at the very least, one thing that feels good and one thing that you can very much understand as useful, and the usefulness doesn't even have to come from doing one particular thing in in another and of itself, let's say, because that is also part of the fun that you can learn how is it that some things are considered interesting and are considered wonderful because you get the opportunity to explore and play a lot of times with the different conceptions and ideas that do exist around life, and you get to see quite a lot, and in doing so it is that you can finally, by continuously trying to, you will finally, at some point or another, experience what truly is fulfilling and what truly is nice to do. And that ends up being the final point. If you can dedicate yourself to that, and if you can do something of that sort, instead of being so much pushed towards what, at the end of the day, you don't feel is something good, if you can properly do something of that sort, and if you can consciously try to always do something of that type in life, then it is that you have the possibility to properly decide which kind of things is it that you are going to be obviously doing from for the rest of your life, in a sense in which no other thing can truly make you feel like that, because it ends up being quite, yeah. The problem with feelings is no matter how much you try to describe something, you can only feel the different feelings that people talks about to properly understand them. It is quite impossible. One of the recent reasons as to why, for example, I try to avoid something like talking about love or whatever. It is quite meaningless to try and talk about such things if you haven't even experienced something like that. It is quite an impossible task for you to picture something that isn't a part of your own life. Let's say I have heard more than enough times in this type of conversation that we had. I don't even know where, but we had with somebody with my daily life this conversation of you can only know what you see and what you experience. You can't become aware of things that are outside of your reality, and that isn't surprising at all. But the very same thing is also true for your emotions, and even if everybody else talks about them, no matter how much you try, you won't even picture how it truly feels to have them. It is like it is like that in a lot of different areas and a lot of different feelings that need to be had by oneself in order to properly get what they are referring to subtly. So if I say something along the lines of what I just said before, it becomes an incredibly fulfilling feeling itself, the one of being capable of doing what you wish to, and you have never tried to go for something like that. There is a certain problem that is perhaps you won't even notice what is being talked about here if you haven't even tried to have something like that. But the promise that there will be something truly good and the possibility of trying to get that thing which will unavoidably feel so incredibly good is always there, and it is only a chance that opens itself up once you are capable of understanding that even if you haven't even experienced that, it might be worth enough of your time and your actions and your patience and yourself and every single thing that is related to you and your. So it is only a promise that gets fulfilled once you can deal by yourself with that sadly on one hand, but on the other it is also the reality of it feels so incredibly good that there is no way in which by simple words I can describe it and anybody else can understand what I am talking about. And not because, once again, it isn't even in the realm of understandable words, it is rather so outside of this comprehension what is that degree of happiness that you can have once you do something of that sort, that only by going after it yourself you can get, and you can finally say, at the very least to yourself, I certainly see what is being talked about now, and I can certainly understand it, and I might as well. I I am pretty sure it will happen to anybody who finds something meaningful enough. I can certainly see why that happens, even that people wishes to dedicate their whole lives to a certain cause, let's say. So yeah, it is in those lines, once again, that just because said feeling exists in life, no matter how much time you spend, it becomes worrisome and it becomes Im- imaginably good. It becomes one of the most amazing things to have in life, and it ends up gaining the possibility of being treated as one of the best things even to try to do in our limited existence, let's say. And knowing that it happens like that is quite wonderful because, once again, the main idea as to why I wrote this one topic up is because the normal world always predicates this concept of you might as well need to spend huge amounts of time in things in order to see any kind of good feeling. And reality is, if you can find something worthful enough, you rather don't. You will find out how good it feels to be doing something of any type of area in life, and you will start to feel good, sometimes even the moment in which you start to act towards that one thing. And it, I hate, once again, I said it before, it sounds like a promise, something that you might not experience, even if you try it, but the reality itself is, if and when you find something meaningful enough, it will get justified and it will be quite an amazing adventure. But it needs to happen that one finds it itself after having tried a lot of things. That is also why having patience is always a requisite of being alive. You don't really, nobody truly knows, not that you personally, only the one person on the other side. No, 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 no. Everybody doesn't know fully what he wants to do in life until they have exhausted every other possibility. You never know if out of nowhere what is the most meaningful thing for you is might be hidden behind indulging in vices or consuming any kind of particular substance or any kind of addiction that gets fueled by or electronic era. You never know if that might not be the case for you unless you experience that yourself. But sadly, even if that were to happen like that, most, if not almost every single human being end up simply getting addicted to a feeling that certainly is even bad, because you hear a lot of people saying, yeah, I don't even enjoy doing this one thing, but I will keep on acting this way in order to justify the rest of my existence or something along those lines, because it hardly is properly understandable. Why would you be doing something that feels so bad for so long? And all of that always happens and always exists that way in life, and you can see as something quite, yeah, always quite wonderful if you try hard enough, and something quite more fulfilling once again if you try to find out. But there is no correct so far word that shows this happening. And once again, anyways, going back into the other side of this idea, because as I said, there is this obsession with time. One of the many promises that can be made about finding something meaningful enough is no matter how much time you spend doing that one thing, it feels good. No matter how much time you spend doing that, it feels good. And that is quite a surprising thing once you find out about that, because sometimes, once again, the world predicates ideas of, yeah, you might as well be here 20 hours every single week doing this one thing that, honestly, sometimes after pushing yourself so much, even if you love it, you will unavoidably start to feel bad doing that one thing, even if it has nothing to do with what you particularly are doing, because you start to realize that sadly you're pushing yourself, sadly the quality with which you're doing the things that you say you like to do is being diminished. Every single thing acts in order to show you all of those things, and every single thing is there for you to learn about. How is it that many situations happen around different areas of life and different spectrums of what is it that we call being alive. And once again, the concept slash promise of once you find something meaningful enough, it will feel good no matter how much time you spend, is sometimes you will be acting mere minutes doing something, seconds doing something, and just with that it will be enough. Because if you have found something truly meaningful, you can also see how what you are trying to do is useful to that one thing, let's say. And that is why, once again, time isn't so much of a worry once you find that one thing that feels good. The problem per se might be that not everybody even understands why they would even need to spend time in trying to search something like that when the world itself offers you so many other things that are said to feel good or are said to be rewarding or whatever. But I guess that is kind of a different problem, a different kind of situation that doesn't even happen to everybody. Not, I wouldn't say not that many people, sadly, in nowadays world, At the very least, we realize that if you try to observe, you will find out there are huge amounts of people who are doing things that are not even close to feeling good, sadly. But the very reduced minority, the handful of people who have found something good enough, those can tell you that it was rather good enough and that it was rather fulfilling once again. But it ends up going back into this whole side of you can only experience it yourself. There is no way in which a description of that feeling will make you understand that, sadly. It isn't. I guess one of the few good sides of negative emotions is you can picture them in your mind, and because you understand that they are bad, you don't need to experience them yourself. There is no need for anybody to truly have any kind of encounter with all of those things and any kind of contact or direct contact at the very least with the side of life which is so dark, but the good feelings are certainly something worth pursuing, even if you believe right now that what is being talked about seems to be impossible to understand from the point of view of somebody who has truly tried everything else and found nothing truly fulfilling out there, let's say. So yeah, it ends up just again going back into this side of, but it will work out and it will be more than good enough. And anyways, I wanted mostly to say because there are too many things to say about it, so it it takes some time to get the proper one idea that I wanted to mention out, and that is I have talked about time, I have talked about how sometimes it can even feel like 1 minute doing something good enough is fulfilling and is certainly impactful, and in any kind of area of life in which you have found the proper meaning, sometimes even a minute of your time spent doing that might be more impactful for everything else than hours or days or weeks spent on any other thing. The degree of fulfillment that you gain from doing things that you can properly regard as meaningful is incomprehensible for those who have never tried to go behind such an idea, because it it is quite meaningless to search for anybody to blame, but I guess to a certain extent we have the tendency towards negating what might be so good to everybody, if it also is something that not that many people seem to be pursuing. So sadly, this world predicates the idea that if you pursue something meaningful, it will feel bad out of nowhere, when the reality itself, once again, isn't like that at all. But I don't know, it always takes time to properly picture, and it always takes, if you have never even tried it yourself, sadly, it takes quite a huge degree of courage to try and pursue anything like that, and anything that might even resemble said ideas without you feeling despair about said things and whatnot. So yeah, it is kind of weird. I will not negate. It is always kind of weird how it works like that and how it always takes so many things in order for you to properly find out from the side of somebody who was yeah, after all, always the other side, and I guess there are not enough promises that can be made that will make it justified and that will make it seem to any degree something meaningful of pursuing, but with enough time, with a good enough intention also, something that is quite good appears, something that is quite useful appears in life. It simply needs to be searched for, I guess, and it simply needs to be shown to oneself what might feel good and what might be to a degree nice to have in life once again. But not everybody is willing to go that far in order to see if there is anything like that even. So yeah, it is quite hard basically. But now, I guess one of the many problems of talking about abstract concepts is that certainly they are incredibly abstract for some people. So going back into something more tangible, I guess, I, all of this can be kind of traced back also into a very good example. Even if we are here for mere minutes some days, it is more than enough. It is more than good enough. It doesn't matter sometimes the time itself, but rather how much things are done and how much of a goodness happens instead of here. And I am not talking about life, I am not talking about existence, I am not talking about anything abstract. Once again, I am simply talking about being here in the best description possible, something that kind of is touching that fourth wall. Instead of this strip, it is already good enough. Instead of this tiny place, is more than enough some days. As long as, once again, something good happens, it is more than enough. And it doesn't need to be something that took us hours upon hours to discover, or something that needs to have 1,000 hours every single year behind. The, the meaningfulness doesn't come from that, sadly, I guess. So it is in no way justified by that, and it isn't in any way correlated to that, sadly. I I guess some people like simply to have bigger numbers, even in that sense, in which being almost every single hour of the day, in this case, I guess, streaming, is their proper meaning, but that isn't the meaning at all here. Everything else is what matters, but not how much hours we have spent here. Sadly, there are too many things to talk about, so it is the point that we needed to have that much time in our hands in order to mention at the very least every single thing that needs to be thought about, but it doesn't matter how much do we truly spend. It doesn't even matter like that. And yeah, I don't know. It always is wonderful to think about it that way once you can finally feel that, because the meaningfulness isn't in, once again, I guess. I kind of started that. I will try to finish it with that. There is this whole idea, this whole side of, yeah, perhaps we need to be here the, for incredibly long periods of time. It doesn't even find itself being closely related to that. It isn't even close to be about it. It doesn't affect anything really. Well, that side, in this case. What matters is what we can say and what we can properly think about, and what can be a good conclusion that you yourself can picture out of here. I mean, in a different level, in a different space of consciousness, no matter how many hours even I myself spend here, I have reached a lot of conclusions and I have thought about a lot of things myself. But if you personally can't even think about them for your own self, it still is meaningless. If you can't even make sense out of what is being said here, it is still meaningless. And it will probably keep being like that until the end of our days because, once again, this isn't about also myself only. It never is about just, wow, self indulging behavior. So, yeah, it is kind of hard to properly describe it. Once again, sadly, it goes back into the side now for real of something more abstract, feelings and all of that. You can only have that type of idea be shown to you by your own self. There is no way in which I can try it. It doesn't mean that nobody has the possibility of. You can fully describe a feeling. I can't go on and tell you how hard it is to have things like grief or love, as I said before, or passion or whatever. It doesn't matter. If you haven't experienced that yourself, it doesn't matter. It will never matter. It is the very same thing as those who are born with problems inside of their, I think it was the amygdala, that can't even have feelings at all. That the mere idea of feelings is something impossible for them. It doesn't matter how much I try to explain to you that it it can be simply said, I guess. It it can't be simply put into words, sadly. So yeah. Um, the point once again is experience things. In this case, find something more than meaningful enough for anybody. That is indeed what feels good. And that is indeed what can make sense out of everything else. The only problem, I guess, is it takes time. But most of us, if not almost everyone, has enough time to find out about said things in a manner in which it doesn't consume ourselves. So yeah, patience is key always. Patience is indeed the key to being here and the key to find anything that is good. Sadly, I guess. we we sadly don't live in a world in which life is incredibly instantaneous. We we don't get that pleasure. So I guess it simply is understanding that, yeah, the capacity to understand that this is an incredibly slow adventure, nothing else. But yeah, I don't know. It also is quite hard not to fully picture because it certainly, as I have said here, it can be nice to have in mind at the very least, even if you yourself believe that it makes no sense. It is quite nice to have in mind, but it is quite hard to keep in mind. There are too many things that happen in life that might as well get out. Yeah, that make you get out of, say, the thinking, let's say. But yeah, um, patience is the key. Patience is what makes it good. And more than good enough of a capacity to resist any other kind of bad thing is what makes it nice, I guess. Also, thank you for lurking, Savannah. I guess very, very nice if you're finally going to get some breakfast. I don't really have anything to say in that sense. Very nice. Because basically, you already know the problem, you already know how to solve it, so very good. Very good for taking action, I guess. But yeah, I don't know, that is simply what I wanted to say today. I I think I don't even know. I believe I was thinking about it yesterday or so. At some point it happens like that, that you realize about it, that you finally make sense out of it, and you understand that it doesn't really matter how much time you spend in a certain way. What matters is what you do with that time and what you can accomplish with all of that time spent in those things that you say you like so much. So yeah, that is also basically also thank you for being here, Crespian. Uh, um, the point is basically that not every day it needs to be incredibly long, and not every day it needs to be an incredibly complex one. It is more about what gets accomplished in that time that matters, not how much time you really spend on a task. Yeah, it isn't, life isn't a test of trying to see how long can you live while avoiding as many problems as possible. It is rather solving as many problems as you can in order to have a good life indeed. So yeah, basically that. I guess confrontation will probably be another good word to have here in this scenario. But yeah, I don't know. I think it is always nice to think about it. And personally, to give it a final closing word, it also is quite wonderful not only to have the way in which we ourselves see it, but also it is amazing to have the possibility of hearing about how other people see it, because it is in hearing the opinions of others in these kind of things that you can remember how you personally feel about said things, because the way in which you picture those things is so personal. After all, we have a lot of ideas, even if it is said that many of our ideas are inherited from the outside world, those that we can properly polish into something that is personal is certainly something that you can cherish with enough, let's say, attention and dedication, so that when somebody else mentions something remotely close to that, you already understand what is being talked about, I guess. And yeah, it simply is a matter of having the patience. Once again, all the patience that it needs to find those things out by oneself. But I don't know. I want to eight. It doesn't mean that I'm saying, wow, no, yeah, you need to have patience because life is incredibly long. No, certainly not. It isn't about, yeah, and it is good to not take action. No, that is not patience. That is procrastination. I am sad that it gets accepted as something so good to have around, but that isn't part of what I'm talking about. That it isn't even close to be or to being what I am here saying anything about. It is more along the lines of, yeah, I can properly picture myself doing something good enough and something meaningful enough. If that doesn't happen, then most of what I have been talking about here is not understandable for yourself, let's say. Not something that you can properly say you're experiencing. The desire to procrastinate is indeed not just a little bit harmful, but rather annoying enough to understand that, yeah, it makes no sense to have that. And it makes no sense to accept that, sadly. So, yeah, it is. It is always wonderful to, once again, remind oneself about what is truly good or meaningful or whatever else it is that One can call it like, I guess. But yeah, it is quite crazy still. After all, life itself is incredibly crazy. But yeah, I don't know. I guess. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say so far about that. And let's say like this. I know it is kind of bad, once again. Compared to what is the norm, it is incredibly negative. But now that I have made my point to finally execute it fully, this is everything for today. This is everything for today. I also quite lately started. I no, yeah, I have a huge degree of excuses, and it is meaningless to use any of them. So yeah, no excuses. Simply, I started late. I am still ending on time. So tomorrow I will try to not start so incredibly late. I, I will, yeah, something that I remember. It is I have been always battling with this one idea. Sadly, there is this degree of when you say you are going to try something, you might as well be mentally preparing yourself for the failure of at the very least I tried. And it means that when you say basically that you are going to try something, you aren't really trying to accomplish anything at all. You're simply accepting that you will fail before you even begin to try anything. And you're accepting that it will go badly. And you're accepting that it won't really give you any kind of happiness. So, at the very least, you said that you were going to try, you did your minimal degree of effort, and you unavoidably failed. So, yeah, I try to not meditate it that way personally. But know that certainly having something like that inside of your own language is quite harmful. And even I myself know that. So yeah, I try to not mean that tomorrow I will also be late. Yes, but yeah. Anyways, thanks for being here. That's all from me and for me today. No, nothing more to really add. I guess yeah, there are still opportunities, or at the very least, there is the idea of a future opportunity. But from me, nothing else to really say. From me. So yeah. Anyways, um, thanks for being here. It has been quite nice, but once again, as I have been saying for the last 2 minutes, three, four, five, that's it. Thanks for all. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for looking. Thanks for watching the VOD. But um, it isn't about being 20 hours here. It is about what is truly meaningful. So yeah, thanks for all. But anyways, goodbye, people. Have a nice one. Have a have a nice life. Enjoy it. Do what you need to do. Find something meaningful, please. And yeah, until the next time. And even if there is no next time, still, it doesn't invalidate what happened so far. So, once again, thanks for every single thing that has happened. And yeah, keep yourself safe. But now, anyways, something more important, more momentarily, more pressing matter of the present. We are going to live. We are going to go into Ainsley, who is playing a horror game. So yeah, keep yourself entertained with that, I guess, or not. Do whatever you want. It is your life. I don't get to order that around. So yeah, thank you. Goodbye, people.